Welcome back to the Exempt List. It's draft week. Today, we are talking about quarterbacks from Zach Wilson through Caleb Williams and Drake Maye and all of the young guys that are going to be entering this year's draft. I'm going to be joined by Derrik Klassen from Bleacher Report, and we'll be right back with the show in a second. Welcome to the Exempt List, part of the Zero Blitz podcast family. I'm your host, Charles McDonald, and today I am joined by a very good friend of mine, Derrik Klassen from Bleacher Report and Reception Perception. We are going to go over his quarterback charting leading up into the draft this week. That's on Thursday, a little over 48 hours from now. I just want to intro you. Derrik, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. You sound like you're ready for the draft season to be over. A little exhausted, ready for the week to be over.
Just a little bit. Yeah, it's this is like one of my least favorite parts of the draft, of really the entire NFL calendar. Not the draft itself, but like the 6 weeks from the first day of free agency, where everyone's invigorated again, through the start of the draft. And I feel like people, you have all this excitement because something about the transaction is really exciting to people, where you have, guys in new places and money being thrown around. And especially this year with, a whole new level of cap space that NFL teams have access to. And then you have to do something with that energy for the next 6 weeks. And we were just talking about before the show, we were going over like what news we wanted to talk about. Nothing really happens from like mid-March through the first week of April. We've gotten the Stephon Diggs trade. We got Rashee Rice being a menace with, whatever fast car he was driving. I don't remember precisely. And now we have the Zach Wilson trade. Zach Wilson has finally been traded from the Jets to the Broncos. I got to be honest with you. I'm surprised that anyone picked up that contract just based on how well he's played or not well he's played over the past 3-ish years of his career. Does this trade mean anything? Like on any level, from the draft to the actual playing field, does this mean anything?
No. The only thing that this tells me is that like Sean Payton doesn't want Ben DiNucci on the roster in September. Like that's all that this is. This doesn't do anything for me about like who they want to draft. Do they think they can move up? Like what do they think about Jarrett Stidham? Like none of that. This is about like they don't want Ben DiNucci on the roster.
Yeah, which is fair. I think that's pretty fair. They're just in a bad spot, man. The Broncos, like they're in such a bad spot. And I wrote about it and we'll get into it a little bit later, but they spent 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick. The second-round pick is for this year, so that they don't have access to it, for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. Russell Wilson is for now, starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Sean Payton, I don't really know what to make of that first year. It was pretty bad. The highlight probably would be trying to get Russell Wilson to change his contract so that you can not have to eat as much money, in the event that things go poorly. And I think one thing that we should remember is like last year's Broncos season didn't go really as poorly as it could have gone. Like they almost made the playoffs at the end of the season and they beat the Chiefs one time. But I guess they decided Russell wasn't their future, so they're going to eat this year. So we're both on the same page. This has no effect on whether or not they're not what they should or whether they're going to go ahead and get a quarterback this year.
Yeah, it just does nothing. And like, I think the only thing we really learned about Sean Payton last year was just he went into that job, zero intentions of making the Russell Wilson thing work. Like just absolutely none. At every step, it seemed like he just wasn't interested in that, which is fine. Like Russ is not at all a Sean Payton quarterback. Like even if you think Russ can still work and do something, it's not at all in the Sean Payton offense. So it makes a lot of sense that this is kind of where we arrived.
Yeah, I don't think that this is an admission that Denver, couldn't get up into the draft. Although, unless they're willing to reach into 2025 and 2026 picks, I don't really see a path for them to get up and actually make this trade happen. Because, like I said before, they're out of the second round pick that they used to get Sean Payton. So the only top 100 picks they have this year are 12 and 76. Now, they do have 6 picks between pick 121 and pick 206, but those are not picks that are going to get you up into the top 5 of the draft where you need to be to select a quarterback. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about some of the draft storylines that we're going to get to this year. I think the last thing on the Zach Wilson, piece of news that we have, at what point would it make sense for the Jets to draft a quarterback in this year's class? Or would it just not make sense for them to do it at all? They're sitting at 10. They don't have their second round pick due to the Aaron Rodgers trade, and their next top 100 pick is pick 72. Unless they pick one at 10, they're kind of out of the quarterback market, right?
Yeah, they're not going to get any of the top guys. Even if they stand pat at 10, I think there is a more of a shot than people think that JJ McCarthy could fall a little bit.
Agreed.
Probably not really past 11 or 12, but I think it's possible he gets to that range. I still don't think even if he's there that they would take him, even though it could make sense, right? It would piss off. It would piss Aaron Rodgers off. But in terms of the long-term health of the team, it would make a lot of sense. So I think they're going to end up having to see what they like in either Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler. I was going to say, I've said on a bunch of shows, I'm not a huge Michael Penix guy. I think Bo Nix could make sense in terms of if they just want a guy to run the offense. But if you're drafting behind Aaron Rodgers, you want a developmental guy. So that kind of just leaves them with Spencer Rattler. And I'll be honest, I think there is a legitimate shot that Spencer Rattler really has come around as a person. It seems like he's gotten great reviews from his newer teammates in South Carolina, all his coaches and stuff like that. At the same time, him and Aaron Rodgers in the same room. Oh man, I don't know. There could be something weird going on there. I don't know if I like the vibes there. So they're kind of in a really bad spot in terms of how would they get a quarterback in this class?
Yeah, I do just find the notion of and we've talked about it for the past, year now since Aaron Rodgers has been a member of the Jets, of this idea of don't want to piss off Aaron or what? Or what? He's 40.
Right, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? Retire next year? He might do that anyway.
Right. Or what's he going to do? Retire before the season? Well, shoot. We were prepared for that scenario regardless. I don't know. The idea that you can't piss off Aaron Rodgers. He's 40. It's not like this is 10 years ago where you're we're looking at, making a Jordan Love type pick where, yeah, that might piss him off. And then he has 2 MVP seasons after that. But this is not that. So, if you want to make a quarterback pick, if you want to pick Rattler at pick 72, I would say that that's probably pretty smart from an investment standpoint. Whether or not it works out, I don't know. But, we just saw a whole bunch of teams in that 2022 class try with 3rd round quarterbacks, and they've all moved on. Really nothing happened. Where Ritter didn't quite work out. Malik Willis was a dud. Matt Corral, and you when you pay that little price, you kind of get to move on. It's not really a big deal. But let's move on to the guys who are actually going to be drafted this year. We have 4 or 5 projected first-round quarterbacks this year with USC's Caleb Williams, UNC's Drake Maye. You have Michigan's Jayden McCarthy, LSU's Jayden Daniels, and potentially Washington's Michael Penix. You have charted all of these guys a deliberate, tedious, at times painstaking process of charting all these guys and the watching of college football film that comes with it. First of all, before we kind of get into the results, you do this charting for reception perception now. What kind of goes into the charting and what's your process there?
Yeah, it's a lot. I have, just a basic Excel sheet or whatever, Google sheet, whatever you want to call it. And there's 20 to 25 little columns that I've got to put in. Anything from, down and distance, whether they're in shotgun or not, whether they get pressured, whether, which quadrant of the field they're throwing to, outside the numbers, 11 to 15 yards, all that other stuff. And then in terms of more of the nitty gritty, in terms of the accuracy, I'll chart open window accuracy, closed window accuracy. And then I have a couple of other, denotations did the receiver have to make an adjustment that was not necessary on the throw? And that's kind of one thing I want to talk about that is different from the film. There will be throws on film where it looks like the receiver has to go out of their way for a ball, but maybe that's the only throw that the quarterback could make. And so I don't count that as an unnecessary adjustment. It's like, well, that's the only place the ball could be. Sure, the receiver had to go make a play, but that's the only spot the ball could be. I'm more talking about like, you've got just like an open slant route and the dude has to catch it on his back hip. It's like, okay, well, there's no reason for that. So that's kind of more of the stuff that I try to, separate from just like, is the ball catchable? I try to dive in a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, it's good context for everyone. And I think the longer you stay on Twitter and see people putting out, some of their own versions of analysis, I'm like, man, fundamentally disagree on what accuracy or what a catchable ball is. A lot of the times, and I feel that a lot this year when, I've seen people talk about Michael Penix, who we'll get to in a little bit, because I thought your description of his charting profile as something you cannot stomach was really funny.
Not for me.
Thought about
not
that
for
a lot.
me.
Not for it's not for me. It's not for you. So first of all, I feel like we should start off in the spot where the 2024 draft is going to start off, and we've known since maybe right before the combine, during the combine, sometime around then, that the Bears were locked in on Caleb Williams to be the first overall pick in this year's class. It's about as good of a landing spot as a number one pick can get, because they did the inverse of what happened to the Panthers, where the Panthers traded for the first pick, gave up DJ Moore, they gave up another draft pick assets, and then I think Bryce Young's rookie year being whatever you make of it. I think one thing everyone can agree on is the Panthers were not ready to make that move for a rookie quarterback. Didn't have infrastructure in place. I think you could have put CJ Stroud there and it would have been better, but I'm not willing to say the Panthers would have made the playoffs if CJ Stroud was their quarterback last year. Like it was a pretty bad situation for them. Caleb Williams, he gets to walk into an offense with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, another top 10 pick. We've got Darnell Wright, who's a top 10 pick last year at offensive tackle, who looks like he's going to be a stud. Braxton Jones for a 5th round pick, more than serviceable at left tackle. I mean, you're talking about like your 3rd and 4th best options as a rookie are going to be Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good life to be living, as someone who's first entering the NFL. But as you charted Caleb, what were some of the takeaways that you had, or really what are some of the numbers that really pop out about his charting profile compared to other quarterbacks this year?
Yeah, so I mean, Caleb's profile for the most part is solid. It's not elite in the way that I think people are talking about him, just his film, like the caliber of prospect he is. People are talking about, oh, he's as good as Trevor Lawrence, like super generational. His charting profile is more like solid with some really nice high-end flashes. He had like 70.4 adjusted accuracy, which again is like fine. You're not worried about it at all, but it wasn't elite. Where I thought he was pretty good is he threw down the field 15.4% of his throws, and he was accurate on about 51% of them, which, like, when you're throwing them that often, it's a pretty good spot to be in. Like, it really is. The other thing with Caleb that I think kind of really sets him apart in this class, 27% of his targets into tight windows, 47% success rate, which is pretty high. Like, compared to some of the NFL charting I did last year, that would have been one of the better marks. Obviously, college to NFL is a little different, and I'm not like fully sure how I want to calibrate that, the differences between the two, but still acquitted himself really, really well in that sense. And then under pressure, like again, 28.5% pressure rate, which is a lot. Some of those are on him. He likes to hold the ball a little bit, but a lot of that too is just like the USC offensive line is terrible, and he was just under pressure a lot. And honestly, the pressure rate could have been higher if you think about like a lot of the throws in the offense were screens. So if I were to just take out screens and like then recalibrate his pressure rate, it's probably significantly higher. Still had just over a 50% success rate, which is totally fine. So, and then really the other thing, which I think kind of speaks to Caleb's skill set overall, his red zone success rate was 74%. Like that is where I think you like fully see the arm talent, the creativity, the toughness in the pocket, like his just ability to have that like cool, calm awareness in those high leverage situations. That's where I think you see the best of Caleb Williams. So that's kind of what the numbers say about him. The only like kind of worrisome thing in his profile was In terms of like my heat map that I do, I do it by 10 yardage range and then left outside, middle, right outside. The only one where he struggled was 11 to 20 yards over the middle. He's kind of short. Like, I mean, he's not like, Kyler Murray. He's not like all the way, 5'10" or whatever. He's not like Bryce Young, but he's a little bit on the shorter end. And then I think when you couple that with some of just the inconsistency within the offense, like not even just Caleb's fault. Like I think Lincoln Riley just kind of had issues as a play caller this year. None of USC's receivers, truthfully, were like that good as like contested catch, over the middle, like just toughness type of thing. So I think he struggled in that area a little bit. If there's anything where he's just never going to be great in the NFL, that would probably be it. But I still saw enough flashes on film where I was like, he'll probably be fine. Like it's just part of why I comped him to Kyler Murray is like Kyler Murray's best area isn't 11 to 20 over the middle, but like he can do it and it allows the rest of what he's good at to make him a really, really good quarterback. So
yeah, and I think I would imagine that having Keenan Allen year one, if Keenan Allen is healthy, that's a good spot for Keenan Allen as Caleb tries to learn more about throwing over the middle of the field in the NFL. And yeah, I agree with you on the USC and Lincoln Riley stuff. That team was not that good.
It was not what a Lincoln Riley team should be.
No. Even the year he won the Heisman, like that team was not all that good. Like they got stomped on by Tajay Spears in the bowl game, and then they came out the next year. And I think this year when I knew that USC wasn't really that good was when they were in that dogfight with Colorado. Like I was like, oh, okay, this is not a real team. And I would be pretty concerned about what that team looks like if I'm a USC fan without Caleb, because, he just did so much of the heavy lifting. So yeah, I think Caleb for me is my quarterback one. I think that this is kind of a no-brainer pick for the Bears. And it's like kind of one of those no-brainer picks where it's like you get credit for like the maneuvering that got you to the number one pick for sure. But, it's kind of like picking Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck for me. It's like, come on. Yeah, this was the pick everyone would have made.
It's been the pick for 2 years. Like, what are we?
Right. Seriously. I mean, really, since he beat out Rattler at Oklahoma, everyone's like, okay. Because I remember, like, I think it was the Texas game that Caleb had where he threw some crazy dots like Marvin Mims in the corner of the end zone that was like 50 yards out and only one spot where you could put it. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, okay. This guy's kind of got different level of arm talent, and I'm excited to see what it looks like in the NFL. And I'm excited for him that he's not going to some destitute situation where there's nothing here for him. You have real deal NFL offensive line. You have a defense you can count on. That defense really turned the corner after the Montez Sweat trade and became legit one of the best units in the league, even though people were saying you can't spend a pick on Montez Sweat and pay him the contract, even though they had 2 first-round picks coming up. I'm not really sure. At some point, it's okay to use your assets to go get something. Don't have to just sit on them like the goddamn dragon from Beowulf and, have this mountain of gold that no one can touch. But regardless, it's a good situation for him. Let's do Drake Maye. Where did you land on Drake Maye, just ranking him overall among the top 5?
I love Drake Maye, dude. He's actually my quarterback, like 1A. And like I keep saying this. I think some people, when I put Drake Maye slightly above Caleb, people think that I think something less of Caleb. I think Caleb is as good as everybody thinks he is. Like, I totally understand why he's going to go first overall. Awesome prospect. I just also think that Drake Maye is like a really, really special prospect. And it keeps going back to, like, for me, if you're going to be one of the top 5, 6, 7, whatever NFL quarterbacks, you have to have S-tier arm talent, like truly every throw on the field from every platform, no matter what. I mean, this dude was even throwing left-handed passes. Like, that's not really what I mean when I say every platform, but shoot, he can do it. And then I think you have to just have really good awareness and toughness in the pocket and the ability to maneuver around. I think Drake Maye very easily checks that box. Like, the thing I keep coming back to is people think that he plays so, like, loose and drifts around a lot and it's really bad. I think people are fully misunderstanding him. Like, yes, he does play toesy. His feet are a little not conventional, and I think that that's totally true. The thing I think people are misunderstanding is, like, that North Carolina offense, their offensive line is terrible. Like truly,
Awful.
Drake. Like there were so many instances where it's like 3-man rush and somebody's getting home instantly, and so I think Drake was just playing with this constant like, I have to preempt whatever is going to happen to me, and so every now and then you get it wrong. 1 out of 5 times you get it wrong, and he looks like a dummy. And yes, he does just like drift right into a pressure. But 4 times out of 5, I think he's understanding exactly where he's going to get pressured from, whether it's like an overload, whether there's like a twist, whatever it is. He knows where the pressure is going to come from, slides away from it just a little bit, creates a throwing angle, boom, makes a play. And I think people are like gravitating to the 1 out of 5 times he messes it up because he's trying to do the hardest thing on the field and not appreciating the 4 out of 5 where it's like, there's just not a lot of 21-year-olds who are making this kind of play. So that he's very much the kind of guy I'm willing to bet on. And the last thing too, a dude can move very, very good.
Oh yeah.
Like he is, Caleb is like quicker and more agile, like in and around the pocket and can just immediately free himself from a rusher. I think when you give Drake Maye a little bit of space, I think he's scarier than Caleb is. Like, I think his long speed is better. He's got, I don't know, man. He's a scary sight out in space. Not quite to Josh Allen level, but like 90% of what Josh Allen gives you as a runner.
Yeah, like I've seen Drake compared to Herbert. I think he's a way better athlete than Justin Herbert is with the ball in his hand. And that's, I mean, Herbert's a good athlete too, but like there's something to Drake actually being a runner. I think there was one year when he was at UNC, and I know that they still, for horrible, lazy stat keeping reasons, still deduct stack yards from rushing yards in college football. But dude, his sophomore season, he rushed for, this is with sack yards included, 698 yards and 7 touchdowns. So like, let's say from what I've seen about, basically the averages and sack yards lost, let's add like another 150 yards to that. You have someone who can really be a real deal threat with their legs as far as they're moving. And I think the one Drake Maye thing that's been frustrating for me, and we see it in the NFL too. We saw it with Patrick Mahomes last year. I think people are really bad at identifying what a great quarterback in a bad offense looks like and what like the mitigating stance or circumstances are on putting out fires or not making bad plays that are there routinely. Because I remember even last year, during the Mahomes stuff, you're like, oh, it's out there. It's out there. People say, oh, has he kind of hit the wall or have we already peaked here? It's like, no, man, he's playing with a bunch of bozos. Like, and that's the problem. You watch Drake Maye's tape, the offensive line's not great. The scheme's not great. Tez Walker is a draft prospect this year solely because he played with Drake Maye. Like when you start breaking it down and you're like, wow, there are still a lot of incredible plays here. That's someone overcoming their circumstances to me. And I think it's something that he should get a lot more credit for. And I know he really has seen the brunt of draft cycle criticism this year. I kind of think it's smoke. I kind of think the closer we get to Thursday, I would be stunned to see him get past pick 3, whether he's a Patriot or a Viking in that circumstance. But when you hear the Vikings and you hear more smoke about, oh, this is a team that wants to go get Drake Maye, he's worth trading those picks for. Like, he absolutely is worth trading those picks for. And then if you're just a football fan, that's pretty exciting too. Just to think about him and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Hawkinson. That's a good group. Speaking of supporting talent, Jayden Daniels, LSU. I don't think any player this year, except maybe Michael Penix, had more to work with as far as NFL caliber skill talent at the collegiate level is concerned. When you look at Jayden Daniels, obviously it's just Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, who are in this year's draft, but you also have Will Campbell, who's going to be a top 5 pick next year. The right tackle is also going to be a top 10 pick whenever he comes out. Jason Taylor's kid, Mason Taylor, is a pretty talented tight end there. Like, there's a whole lot of juice that they have on offense. So what were your thoughts and what did the charting tell you about Jayden Daniels, who seems like the betting favorite to be the number 2 overall pick on Thursday?
Yeah, I'll start with the charting. If you just looked at my numbers, he's the best quarterback in the class by like a mile. Like it's just like an unbelievably clean profile. He had 77.3% adjusted accuracy. If you look at like every 5 yard range, he's one of the best guys in the class. Down the field specifically, like past 20 yards, 59.4 success rate. Like just unbelievably accurate to basically every level of the field. And I do think you see that in his film. Like when he's just operating quick game, like 1, 2, 3 balls out, it's right where it needs to be. When he's throwing like outside the numbers, like corners, sails, stuff like that, right where it needs to be. He can get enough loft on the ball while also having the velocity to make sure it gets there in time. And then you look at his deep balls, whether it's the million slot fades that they threw or some of the go balls, just knows how to like pace those really, really well. Obviously, it helps when like, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas pretty consistently have a step on the guy, so you're not worried about throwing it into coverage really, but he was still delivering it at a pretty unbelievable rate. And then even if you look at like all of the quadrants on his heat map, like he's pretty clean across the board. The only area he kind of struggled was 1 to 10 over the middle, which is a lot of your slant routes, like drags, like shallow crossers and stuff like that. Maybe some spot routes and stuff like that. I think some of those over the middle of the field, he had a little bit more trouble like hitting moving targets like across his face, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be like prohibitive of his game. And then really just like the rest of his profile again is like unbelievably clean. The other thing I want to say too, 80.8% success against zone coverage, which is really good. And to me, when I look at the zone coverage stuff, that to me is like kind of sets your floor in the sense of like, it's like, okay, if you can just beat the basic zone coverage stuff, this is at least going to let you play in the NFL. Whereas like man coverage is like, all right, these are some of the tougher tight windows throws. You got to go make those. And he acquitted himself well there as well. But his zone coverage stuff was like, okay, this is a dude who doesn't really throw the ball into traffic that much, generally makes the right decision and balls where it needs to be. So the charting, like I said, is incredible.
Okay, so I'm about to say, it sounds like he should be the first pick then.
Yeah, hold on. Okay. I'll start with, so we have to remember the context here too. And you mentioned it, like just unbelievably loaded cast. But I think it goes beyond that. I think you also have to keep in mind, this is a guy who's played a lot of football. He has started for 5 seasons. We have to remember, like 5-year starters don't exist. There previously were like 5-year players where a guy could redshirt and then maybe start for 4 years. These 5-year starters do not exist. Like this is a COVID era specific thing. And I think we have to keep that in mind. And like if Jayden only got the 4 years of play that you would typically get and came out last year, he's not going top 5. Like he probably would have, I think he probably still would have been a top 100 pick. I think when you look at the athletic ability, the accuracy, he probably still would have been a decent pick, but he would not have been this. It was clearly like, he leveraged all the experience he had, all the skill talent that he had, 2 first-round picks at wide receiver, and executed it very well. But we have to keep in mind, like, guys just don't get to play this many college reps. The other stuff is, when I look at Jayden Daniels, I kind of struggle to see some of the, like I mentioned with Drake Maye, some of the traits that make you a top 5, top 6, top 7 quarterback. I struggle to see it a little bit with Jayden Daniels. I think the way that he manages the pocket, he is very much a 1, 2, 3. If what I want is not there and I feel a little bit of pressure, just a little bit, I'm out. And like that can be okay if you're a guy who keeps your eyes up really well, but he doesn't. He's kind of more in the Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Tyrod Taylor, for as much as I loved him, kind of did this too, where like once he's out, he's just like, all right, I'm moving. And that can be valuable, right? Like that can still get you yards. But when you look at the top of the NFL, the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, even Matthew Stafford when he gets outside of the pocket, Lamar Jackson when he gets outside of the pocket, they're eyes up, man. Like they are looking to make a throw down the field, and that's where you get a lot of your just terrifying 40-yard bombs. Jayden just doesn't really do a whole lot of that. And then the other concern that I have is throwing the middle of the field. Again, this is where I want to bring up like Tyrod Taylor, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. These are guys who don't really anticipate and make really, really aggressive throws over the middle. And I know that this feels nitpicky, and Jalen Hurts specifically has been like a productive, good NFL quarterback. But like the best NFL quarterbacks make really, really difficult throws over the middle into really tight windows, into really specific like timing instances. You just don't get a lot of that from Jayden Daniels. And he has the arm talent to make those throws. Like when he does decide to do it, he has the velocity. The placement is pretty good. He's just not a guy who makes those really aggressive throws over the middle. So those are kind of the issues that I have with Jayden. I think he's really more of like a high floor prospect. I'd be stunned if he's just completely useless. I just struggle to see like the top 8 type of NFL quarterback with him.
Yeah, I've always thought of him as more as like a middle of the first round kind of guy, late first round. The idea that I need to take him number 2 overall, like if I'm the Commanders, and I don't know, or even the Patriots number 3 overall. To me, that just feels like forcing a quarterback pick for the sake of taking a quarterback. Like if I'm looking at, you get past Drake and Caleb, and like, would I rather have Marvin Harrison or Jayden Daniels? I don't know. To me, that's like a real discussion. But we seem to have really zoomed past some of that stuff when it comes to quarterback evaluation. We got 2 more guys that we're going to talk about before we get to an ad break, and just staying on the theme of like really talented receivers and guys in college and supporting cast. Michael Penix. Well, I guess really this would apply to both J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix. But let's start with Michael Penix. I remember I watched him live a few times, and my first thought was, holy, these receivers are good. Like, my first thought was not about, look at this quarterback. It was, wow, look at Remo Dunes, look at Polk, look at McMillan. These guys are really good. And you start digging even more. It's like, look at Fatanu. I forget how to pronounce his last name. Yeah, Troy Fatanu, the offensive lineman who might be a top 10 pick or a top 12 or 15 pick. The more I watch Michael Penix, I was not blown away by his accuracy. I think the arm strength is good. And then, he comes out and runs a 4.4, which is like, where was this at all at any point? I think he's got one of the more confusing prospect profiles, but I think when you look at the age and the injury stuff, it kind of just pushes him down the board a little bit.
That's a great place to start. Like the age and injury stuff, like I said this about Hendon Hooker last year, where it's like, man, when you're a guy who's just been around this long, you have that bad of an injury history, that's a really scary profile for me. And then again, like kind of like I just mentioned with Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix was effectively a 6-year starter. Like obviously a couple of those seasons were cut short because of injury, but at the very least he was getting like all of the first team reps in practice and stuff. Like he was treated as a starter and got all the real reps. So like, again, guys don't get 6 years of that at the college game. Like it's just not a thing that happens. And then yeah, the receivers, dude, like obviously everybody knows Rome Odunze is incredible. A lot of people seem to like Jalen Polk as like a top 50. He's one of their guys. I also think Jalen McMillan is a top 50 pick, dude. Like I think people have kind of forgotten about him because he missed, the first like 2/3 of the season with injury. He was getting more of the targets and yards in 2022 than like Polk was. Like he was the guy over Polk, and I think people kind of forget that. So like, yeah, this receiving core is absolutely just star-studded. So I think a lot of the production that went on in the Washington offense was just they have 3 top 60 picks and a quarterback who has seen so much football that at a certain point you just become like college good. You know what I mean? Like I think if a lot of guys could stick around for 6 years and play that long, you probably just get kind of good. Yes, exactly. That's the thing. Like Stetson was terrible, but you stick around for long enough, it's like, okay, like you figure it out. Exactly. And when you get a little help, you got some star talent around you. It helps. I'm glad you bring up the accuracy because that's the biggest thing that I think my charting is probably different from like how people view Michael Penix. I think because they saw so many of those high leverage throws that they think he's kind of an accurate guy. I think if I charted purely like catchable balls, he would be better, but I'm charting accuracy, and he threw a lot of not accurate passes that just happened to be caught by really, really good players. His adjusted accuracy actually was 66.3, which is not the worst in the class, but it's within 1% of it. Like he's close to like the Joe Milton's. Like Spencer Rattler's was bad because he was playing in a just awful situation. Michael Pratt's was around this number. Like he's more in that tier of accuracy. And I think you even see that when you just watch him play. Like, do you ever think of him as like operating the 1 to 10 yard area very well? He doesn't. No. Like he just doesn't throw flat routes very well. Some of his work on slants is kind of iffy. Like his timing can get really weird. And then I think even down the field, obviously he can make really good throws, and he does, especially like if he's just purely throwing slot fades, posts, all that stuff. I think the intermediate range, though, when he needs to like put some air under the ball, really layer it, maybe he's throwing a corner route, maybe he's throwing a sail route, maybe he's throwing a deep over with, trail man coverage behind it. To get that up and over that you need for those throws, he just doesn't have it. Like he throws like javelins, dude. Like he's just straight through. Like and like that can still make certain throws, but doesn't really have every club in the bag, and that's kind of my concern with him. And then the last thing is just, I think his play under pressure it's going to be really hard to make it work in the NFL. He's a very tough guy. Like he's willing to make throws from condensed pockets, but he like throws with a really low release, so you're naturally just losing that ability to throw over defenders. And then he drops all of his weight when he does that, so he like loses an extra inch there. It's just hard to throw over defenders. And then you mentioned it earlier, the 4.4 speed that he ran at his pro day or whatever never shows up on film, dude. Just you would never guess it. If you saw him play, you'd guess like 4.8. Like it never shows up. And I think some people are taking it as like, oh, he can do it. Maybe he can learn in the NFL. I don't really think you learn how to scramble. I think you take guys who can scramble and you like make them unlearn it in a way. I think to learn to go create and go make plays, you kind of just have that inclination or you don't. And I think the fact that Penix doesn't really have it is a little bit concerning for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just going to make you a ball carrier against NFL defenses when that's not something you've ever been. I don't know, like the idea that he could just, let's start running options with him in the NFL. I have no reason to think that would go well. Maybe it would.
It's because especially too with his injury history.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
why?
Also that as well. I don't know. I mean, if I was him, I wouldn't be running at all. Well, for what? I've seen what running can do. It's nothing good. It's only bad things on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Let me stay my ass over here. So yeah, he's confusing. I just think when you start really breaking it down, there's a lot of red flags that you kind of got to start really seriously considering. I really wouldn't even consider drafting him until day 2, and even then, maybe until like round 3. I do think the arm strength is intriguing, but that's really about it.
I think he can be like Jacoby Brissett, where like he throws down the field really well. He is tough in the pocket. He will make aggressive throws. The touch sometimes is not there. His ability to create outside the pocket is not there. And that's like a functional, useful quarterback. It's just like, man, it's so hard to see anything beyond that for me.
Yeah, man, it's funny because I was looking at, I've started streaming our Madden Pals franchise games on my YouTube channel, and one of the last videos I uploaded was like Jacoby Brissett versus Virginia draft breakdown cut up.
Oh. I remember the Jacoby Brissett days.
Hey, I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft. So interesting to kind of look back. Last thing before we get to an ad break, real quick, just give me your thoughts on JJ McCarthy and why he is or why he isn't just Brock Purdy in college.
I mean, he might be. JJ's a tough prospect to talk about because I actually sort of like him, and I get what the path is. Like, you look at the arm talent, it's like, sometimes he struggles with touch, but man, he can put some RPMs on the ball. He can really spin it. He can throw it into tight windows, especially over the middle of the field. I mean, they asked him to do it a lot. He's a pretty good athlete.
Where does his arm compare to like Caleb or Drake?
It's definitely below that. Like if Drake and Caleb are, let's just say 95, I would say JJ is closer to like an 85. Like he can spin the ball and he can throw it down the field. It's just he doesn't have near the like touch and control that those guys can get. And so that's, I think, the biggest difference that you see with him, especially throwing outside the numbers. Like this is where I've compared him to Baker Mayfield. And again, people are going to hear this and think I'm hating on him, but like Baker Mayfield's a functional NFL quarterback. But Baker Mayfield, when he throws, it takes every fiber, every muscle in his being to get all that velocity. And that can help him make certain throws, but you also lose the ability to put touch on the ball. And I think especially outside the numbers, that really hurts him. But again, you can still be a functional NFL quarterback that way. Athleticism wise, he's I think well over the bar. Like he's not going to be Drake, he's not going to be like Caleb, but like he can move around enough to make plays outside the pocket. You can use him a little bit sparingly in the zone read game. So I think that's a nice little notch in his favor. The other thing is like he is tough in the pocket. They asked him to make a lot of like tough play action throws. They even asked him like there were certain instances where he's getting blitzed and he's just completely fearless. Like I remember one clip specifically against Iowa. I think they get a free runner in the A gap. Just stone cold, doesn't care, throws like right past him and nails a slant route. I was like, okay, if you have that kind of toughness, you could probably stick in the league. It's just, I think for me, when you look at, some of the footwork, like I said, his ability to throw with touch outside the numbers, I think you take into account his relative lack of experience. Like, he didn't throw a lot, and he was throwing on a team that it was very easy to throw because they were always up in games and always in cushy situations. I think there's probably a development curve here. So I actually kind of like JJ. I see the path. It's just, I think when people prop him up to this like top 5, top 10 pick, they're crazy. I think he's more of like a top 50 pick in the Derek Carr range, the Andy Dalton range, the Colin Kaepernick. You know what I mean? Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. It's sad, but like, that's the caliber of quarterback I think he is. And you can win games with a guy like that. It's just, are you leveraging your franchise at 3 for that? I don't know.
Someone might. Yeah. And we'll get back to a couple more draft storylines after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, we're back. We're going to close out the show with some storylines in the draft. I've identified 4, kind of just go over for this week's 4 Verts columns, and piggybacking off of the quarterback draft discussion, I think we should talk about 2 teams that are in the market for a quarterback, and particularly one landing spot for Drake Maye that I'm really rooting for, that we touched on before, is the Minnesota Vikings. One, I think Drake Maye is good. I don't want to see him go into a situation where he's just sitting around doing nothing. Like, I have been dreading the idea that the Patriots pick Drake Maye. And like, yeah, that could work out long term, but you're not seeing anything good or fun there for like 2 years, at least, while they start to build up the rest of the supporting cast. Vikings, you got Jordan Addison, stud rookie, TJ Hawkinson, stud tight end, and someone named Justin Jefferson, who, for my money, is still the best receiver in football. I want this to happen so badly. Like, obviously, the Vikings are trading up for a quarterback. They've positioned themselves to do so. I think it's smart, especially with Jordan Love turning into what he's being. Caleb Williams about to enter the division. The Lions are still good. What are you going to do? Just mill around doing nothing for a few years? No, go get a quarterback. I just want this for the potential NFC North rivalries that we'll get between Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, and Drake Maye. Those are all 3 like dynamite prospects who have S-tier arm talent and aren't afraid to play the game in exciting ways. So that's really all I want to see. And I just wanted Justin Jefferson to feel like he has a quarterback throwing to him again that's worth it to him, because him and Kirk were pretty good. When he got back last year and they were dealing with some backup quarterbacks, that was not as fun, even though Justin Jefferson still looked pretty good.
Dude, if they let me, I would pay money out of my own pocket to get Drake Maye in Minnesota. Like, it is so unbelievably perfect in every way. I think if Drake Maye landed in Minnesota, it could look a lot like the Justin Herbert rookie year, where it's like, okay, this team isn't perfect, but you've got Keenan Allen at the time was even better and younger than he is now. Like, the offensive line was not great, but like, it was enough at the time. They had Austin Eckler, like that. They had enough where it was like this super talented quarterback could step in and just play the game. I think even Shane Steichen was their offensive coordinator at the time or something, or he was on the staff. So like, it was a pretty good environment. You put Drake Maye in Minnesota, where he's got Kevin O'Connell, who is, for my money, like probably a top 5, top 6 play caller. He's really, really good. They have 2 really good bookends on this offensive line. You mentioned all the receiver talent that they have. Like, this dude could step in right away and be at least top half of the league, like type of quarterback play. And if you can get that from a rookie ever, that's amazing. And I think even just beyond like, this is a nice situation for him. I think the Kevin O'Connell offense, especially if they start to pull a little bit from what Sean McVay was doing with Stafford in terms of like, okay, we can get into a little bit more gun. We can do a little bit more 5-step drop back. We can let the quarterback, kind of like you said, not be afraid to play the game and make some of the hard throws. I think that would just absolutely unlock not only May, but this offense. Because like, that's kind of what the Vikings offense was missing, is like, Kirk is great on the play action stuff. I think he really did develop as a drop back, like a true drop back passer, especially I think working like the 1 to 15 yard area. Kirk really developed there, but there just wasn't a lot of playmaking to Kirk's game, and not even outside the pocket, but just like there are just certain throws that Kirk is not going to make because like he understands what he is. And I think that's like the value in Kirk is he understands what he is. But Maye has that extra level of arm talent, that extra level of aggression that I think could really unlock certain parts of the offense. You give that kind of tool at quarterback to a play caller like Kevin O'Connell with a receiver like Justin Jefferson. I don't know, dude. Like this could very quickly be like oh God, we have like this is a superpower type of quarterback.
Yep. And I think that's fun because I think that Caleb's in a good situation. Obviously, Jordan Love is in a good situation where he started to figure that out last year. You know, the Lions will have to figure out what's
I was just going to say, can we quickly talk about if the Vikings get Maye and you sit here with, you have Caleb, Jordan Love, and Drake Maye, who are all three like Zoomer, just monster arm talent, really good athletes, can make every throw, tough in the pocket. And then you got Jared Goff, who, look, Jared Goff is a good NFL quarterback. He is not in that. He's not that. He's not cut like that. Like, and it's not his fault, man. That's just how it goes. But he is not cut like that. And I think the world would very quickly start to enclose on the Lions.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to acknowledge, just to keep salty Lions fans away, that there's a world where Caleb or Drake Maye, they both bust, or one of them hits and the other one busts. So it's not guaranteed, but like the prospect of Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, superstar playmaker quarterbacks, then there's Jared Goff. You know, it's just, you're going to pay him $50 million a year, which he's earned. And after that, I don't know. I don't know. Excuse me. The other quarterback storyline that I want to get to today was really the idea of the Broncos trading up, which I personally think would be irresponsible after what they have put together over the past, couple of years with their trades for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. Really to the point where I think that they should trade down from 12, even if there's a quarterback on the board. Like, I don't know. Putting JJ McCarthy into this team does nothing for me. And I think that, we've even gotten to a point where we're so caught up on, you got to have the quarterback, you got to find the quarterback. Like, dude, there's a whole other team around the quarterback. There's a whole other side of the ball outside of quarterback. And with the amount of assets the Broncos had this year, they didn't have much cap space to sign anybody. They don't have, a second round pick because they traded that for Sean Payton. They don't even have like a huge stockpile of young talent on their roster because they traded those picks for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. And how are you going to tell me like you're going to spend more to go up and get a quarterback? I don't know. It makes no sense for me. And I really think that they should be going in the opposite direction more than anything instead of trading up.
I think if, from our view, I 100% agree. Because one, yeah, I doubt any of the quarterbacks get there. I think it's possible maybe JJ does. But again, like JJ in this offense right away on this team, probably not going to get a whole lot year one. Like you might see the flashes and be like, oh, we think we have our guy, but he's not going to like get you to the playoffs year one, I don't think, in this offense. And then two, yeah, like trading down, they don't have the picks and they have a bad roster. So like, yes, it would make a lot of sense to go accrue some capital, get as many throws at the dartboard as you can and go get guys. However, we have to explore the mind of Sean Payton. I don't think he cares at all what happens to the Broncos in 2 years. As long like, so I think
that's the thing. that's the other part of this. Like, okay. I understand why Sean Payton might say, hey, I don't want to do this Russell Wilson thing. But, we also know how NFL owners work. And we also have seen in Carolina what happens when your owner does not even feel like $50 million is a real thing. $60 million, that's couch change. This is the Walton family, okay? Walmart. Like, burning through Sean Payton's contract or ripping this thing up early, that's nothing. That's not even real money for them. So the idea that Sean thinks that he might survive long enough to actually see this through is baffling to me. absolutely baffling. Like where Sean is like, okay, we will rip this whole thing up. We'll take on $85 million worth of dead cap, which is I remember when the Falcons got crapped on for getting rid of Matt Ryan, and that was $40 million dead cap. This is 85, double, more than double. You're not in a position to sign anybody. You're not in a position to trade up. I don't understand how Sean thinks he's going to see this through to the end of it. Or maybe those coaching contracts are fully guaranteed. Maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. If if I get a 5-year
maybe
deal,
he doesn't care. You just flip everything this year, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm gone in 2025, whatever. I got my money and I tried.
His contract was rumored for like $18 million a year for 5 years. Hey, I'm still seeing that 90 mil, okay? whether or
not I'm in the building, I don't care.
Yeah. Because our friend Justice, he's asked a lot. He's like, man, why did Sean take that job? And for like 18 million reasons why per year. That's why. Most coaches on like any level of football are not making that kind of money. So, oh man. I just like, if I was a Broncos fan, I would not be wanting to trade up. Unless I can get my hands on Drake Maye, maybe then. But they're still talking about the idea of getting rid of Courtland Sutton because he's one of their last few pieces that has value on offense. It just seems like such a destitute situation. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Speaking of bad situations where a quarterback needs help, trade up team, Jacksonville Jaguars. They can make a whole lot of sense. They have put themselves into the situation. I think that's also a fair thing to note. If they had done Josh Allen contract extension at any point before free agency started, including last year when they could have signed him for a whole lot less, they could have just put the franchise tag on Calvin Ridley, which I think would have made sense for all parties involved based on the season that Calvin had in 2023. But they wait too long. Josh Allen, the edge rusher, signs with them, or they have to hit him with the franchise tag, where they eventually signed the contract extension that happened last week or the week before. But in the process, they had to let Calvin Ridley hit free agency, and he signed with division rival Tennessee Titans. So now you have Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram leading as your pass catching weapons. And I think it's funny because even though you have, spent this money to acquire those guys, everyone knows that that's not good enough, and you still need to go make a trade up to the top. But I do think that if of any team that should trade up, they probably have the best situation.
Yeah, and like the thing is, when I look at how the draft board is probably going to fall, I don't know. Like Jacksonville is a team where, to me, the best Jacksonville like prospects, like the ones that would make the most sense for them, are like Quinion Mitchell, Terry and Arnold. If they could maybe Roma Dunze falls to like 10-ish, like something like that would be absolutely perfect. Pretty much all of those guys are going to be gone by whatever they're picking at 17, 18. I think there's even a shot that Brian Thomas Jr. is gone, who like would be, a lot of people are mocking them, at that spot. I think there's even a chance that he's gone. So it's like, once those guys, if you are even terrified that all four of those guys are going to be off the board, you kind of have to make a move, because I think after that, the board does not really shake out for what they need very well, especially if the receivers are gone. Because at that point, you're picking like, look, I still really like Keon Coleman. He is not going to go this high. So like, they're not going to pick him there. And then like, you're not they're going to take Ladd McConkey at 18. No shot. Like, so you either have to go up and get one of these, like the real deal receivers. Like, like I said, if a Dunes or Neighbors falls to 8 or 9 or whatever, or if you want to go up for one of the corners, or you almost just accept that like, okay, we got screwed. You even might want to just trade back a little bit, but like they're just in a horrible position. I would like to see them go draft, trade up, like, especially like I said, if Roma Dunze falls a little bit, to like 8, maybe, like if Atlanta doesn't love any of the edge rushers there or whatever, like go see what's going on.
If Roma's on the board at 8, I'm gonna need him in red and black for sure. I mean,
dude, him and Drake, that's some contested catchability right there.
Hey, if we're gonna do the whole Kirk Cousins thing, let's just go all out. You
might as well do it, right? Yeah.
Drake, Rome, Bijan. I will be fully ready to point the finger at Kirk Cousins if that doesn't work out. So that's the scenario that I need to protect myself from, because I can cope about a bad defense. Bad defense.
You've done that all your life.
Right. Matt Ryan just retired yesterday. He was drafted in 2008. They had a bad defense the entire time he was there. The entire time. And the best they got was like some bend don't break stuff where we can get sacks and turnovers, but don't ask us to like stop a 5-yard run. Like that's way too much. So yeah, I would like Rome Odunze in Atlanta. But if that's not the scenario, yeah, the Jaguars need to trade up and go get someone. Because now the thing is, they've already talked about, Trent Baalke has spoken about this publicly, where they're slowly working on a deal to get, Trevor Lawrence locked in as the long-term quarterback, which makes a lot of sense. I know people on the internet are down on Trevor Lawrence. I think that that's ridiculous.
He's so good.
I told someone the other day that like he was comfortably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL to me, and they're like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, I don't think you're watching these games. Like we're not digesting these games in the same way. But that's fine. I feel very confident that the Trevor truthers will be vindicated at the end of the day. But we're gonna need him. We're gonna need him to get another wide receiver, because I think just what they have now is not going to cut it. The overlap between Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, I think, is not great. And then, even having like Zay Jones and Gabe Davis as your outside options, that's your passing game is just way too one-dimensional in, from the slot perspective and an outside perspective.
There is no skill player on that team where it's like, okay, do or die, we got to get this dude 12 targets. What are you going to throw to Gabe Davis 12 times? You're going to throw to Christian Kirk 12 times? No, you're not going to do that. If you throw to Evan Ingram 12 times, they're all shallow crossers. Yeah, they need a guy. That's why I personally like Rome Odunze specifically. You can put Rome Odunze outside the numbers. You can just throw 12 go balls, hitches, slants at him, and he's just going to like win the game by himself. So like I would love to see that happen.
Yeah. Last little bit I had on the draft class before we get out of here. I think the defensive tackle class has gotten a little underrated. I haven't posted too many clips because, quite honestly, my Twitter account got raided for DMCA stuff. Like, they went back years and deleted a ton of like film stuff that I put out. And also my streamable account got raided by DMCA folks too. So I need my Twitter account for a lot more than just posting film, because I get people asking me, "Are you still watching the film?" Like, yeah, but like, if I post this film, I might lose access to Twitter, which, as terrible as the website is now, I still need access to talk to people and, and post memes too. So I haven't been able to post as much film as I wanted to. But still, defensive tackle class, I think it's kind of gotten undersold. I kind of think the defensive class as a whole has kind of gotten undersold, outside of the linebackers and the safeties, who are not all that good. But defensive tackle class, you got some guys that are like classic 3-technique penetrators with Drazon Newton, Byron Murphy, Michael Hall from Ohio State. You got some underrated guys like Mekhi Wingo from LSU. Boomer bust guys like Leonard Taylor and Mason Taylor. Leonard Taylor went to Miami. Mason Taylor went to LSU. And then you just have the big, giant behemoth T'Vondre Sweat playing nose tackle for Texas that, he's 360 pounds with like, quote unquote, some pass rush upside. That's like, it's not anything you really expect to be actualized in the NFL, because it just takes too long for them to move up the field. But in college, it does lead to some pretty good clips, I think, that can, anytime you see a 365-pound person getting up the field, it's pretty exciting. But just for you, I know you mostly focus on offensive guys, but what are some of the defensive players you have liked, in your cross scouting?
Yeah, there's a couple. The big one for me is Terrion Arnold, man. Like, he just plays corner the way I like corners to play. Like, he's got decent size, and he is just chippy as hell, and he's going to make you work for every catch, for every little piece of yardage. So he's a corner that I've really, really enjoyed watching. In terms of the other guys, like, I actually do like Dallas Turner. I know he's a little bit undersized, but like, I kind of just trust the Alabama guys to a certain degree of like, they just understand how to play the game. And I think you do see that from Dallas Turner. Like for an undersized guy, he knows how to defend the run. He might get bullied every now and then because he's just not that big, but like generally he knows what's going on. Like it feels very like Bruce Irvin-ish to me. Like Bruce Irvin was not a huge guy, but that dude could defend the run pretty well for a guy his size. And so he's kind of a guy that I liked as well. Some of the other ones, like, I don't know. This is not prospects I liked, but I need to rant about the linebackers really quick. This class, dude, it's as a linebacker enjoyer, as a linebacker purist, these guys cannot play. It's tough. Like I tweeted even the other day, like Peyton Wilson, and he's obviously a fantastic athlete, but 6'4" with 30-inch arms, that's a T-Rex, dude. He's never taking on a block in the NFL. It's just not happening. And then the other one, Edgerrin Cooper, also an insane athlete, like truly unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I hadn't watched him until like a month ago, and I forget which offensive player I was watching on the other end, but I like didn't realize he plays that like BS Isaiah Simmons apex role where he's not really a linebacker. Fake. I was like, this is LB1? Where have my linebackers gone? What's going on? I was going to say the only guys I've liked in this class, like on just basic, kind of seeing them in passing, are like Cedric Gray and Tommy Eichenberg, because they just hit people. Like, we need linebackers who hit people, dude. Where did they go?
It just reminds me of like when Darren Lee, the linebacker from Ohio State, came out in the draft. And I don't remember who was in his draft class, but you start scouting and you're like, dude, this guy is just not lined up in a traditional linebacker role. Like I think one of the things when you talk about scouting prospects, it's like you'll see it a lot, translatable reps. Okay, well, what does that mean? For the NFL, specifically for linebacker, it kind of means that you play linebacker in college. Like, there's some guys where you can kind of squint and try to project them into something that they aren't, maybe. But like, this is kind of what was interesting about the Kenneth Murray evaluation when he was coming out of Oklahoma. Like, these guys, they're not playing linebacker. They're playing like some off the ball hybrid safety kind of role where a lot of the times, like in Kenneth Murray's case, you're just standing there and then running and chasing after the ball declares, whether it's a pass or an option or a run. And that's where in a college level, I can use someone who runs a 4.5 and just have them chase in the open field because that's faster than most players that are on the field. But when you get to the NFL level, it's like the whole plane in terms of college football draft prospects has been built out of Darren Lee's and Kenneth Murray's. Where I'm like, hey, is someone going to stand 5 yards from the line of scrimmage and run full speed into an A gap and beat the crap out of a fullback for me one time? No.
Dude,
okay.
This is why a couple of years ago when I was doing the front seven for Bleacher Report, I loved the Wisconsin linebackers because they played linebacker. Like they were playing real defense. Like Leo Chenal and Jack Sanborn, those dudes were coming up and they were hitting guards. And like, sure, they haven't developed into like, Fred Warner's or whatever, Roquan Smith's. They just don't have that level of athletic ability. But like they play NFL linebacker where like they understand the gaps they're supposed to play. They take on blocks. They condense space. That's what it should look like. Where did those guys go? We need more of them.
Yeah, I feel like we could do a whole podcast on this linebacker.
I could do 3
topic.
hours on linebackers.
Yeah. Dude, like, and even, hey, I'm not sure if people are really paying attention because we got a great year from Will Anderson last year. Edge rushers are kind of taking a hit from where college football defenses are as well. And I understand college football is not their job to get guys ready for the NFL. It's the NFL's job to prepare them once they get there. But man, you're watching like all these mint type fronts. You're watching, defenses playing with 4 guys in the box, and it's tough, man.
Game's cooked.
The game's cooked. The college football, they're playing a different game than the NFL. But dude, if you want to come out in the disconnect here, and we're about to close the show in a second, but I think the disconnect here is like, okay, what works in college does not work in the NFL. But there's only one pipeline, there's one pipeline. So you're going to have to make it work, and I don't agree with like how the Cowboys were in defense last year, where you have safeties playing linebackers. Cause we've done the just move your safeties linebacker thing on Twitter before. I mean, they're still linebacker. Now you have a 210-pound linebacker, but this is kind of what the game's offering you. this is it. We haven't really had, in terms of, I know we've had guys be decent players, but we haven't had a real dynamite linebacker prospect since Roquan Smith. He's on his second deal with his second team. You know, like this is kind of becoming a long time ago at this point. I don't know.
And even then, like, I don't think there were that many between like Luke Kuechly and Roquan. Like, there were more in that like 6-7 year period than there have been from Roquan since then. But even then, like, it started to fall off, and then Roquan felt like the final breath of like, oh, this is what a top 10 linebacker prospect really looks like. Since then, we're kind of, it's the Isaiah Simmonses, or, you know, these like guys who are just runaround guys.
Yeah. Or you're the Patriots and you're like, all right, well, let's see. In round 5, we'll take someone who will still pump some in the mouth. You know,
we'll get our Javon Bentley. That's a linebacker. That's a real linebacker.
That's a real linebacker. Might not be able to run all that much, but when it comes down to it, we're going to hit someone in the mouth. All right, Derek, before we get you out of here, you want to let people know anything you've got coming left before the draft kicks off on Thursday?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at QBClass. Over at Bleacher Report, our final big board is up, I believe, up to 300 players. I think we have 250-ish scouting reports. So we've got, you know, pretty much down into like 5th, 6th round type of guys. So you guys can go check all that stuff out. Reception Perception, I have quarterback charting profiles for the top 7 or 8 guys. I actually just submitted Michael Pratt and Joe Milton, so those will be out before the draft, and that'll be that. So you can go check out all that out as well. And I think that's it. I'm very glad to kind of be wrapping up the draft season. We're about done with it.
Huh. Yeah, who are you kidding? It's done. You know, it's not done. I think for me, this weekend is like my heaviest writing weekend of the year, doing like all the recap stuff. But Monday, I am born a new man. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Exempt List. Jason Fitz and Charles Robinson will be back on Thursday night to recap round 1. I will also be recapping round 1 with Matt Harmon on Thursday after the draft for the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. And I will be back on Sunday with Nate Tice to recap the entire 2024 NFL draft. And also on Sunday, I'll be back recapping the draft with Matt Harmon. So if you are sick of hearing my voice talking about football, talking about the draft, stay away from the draft pods this weekend because I'm going to be all over the place. But we're going to have some good info. It's going to be a good time, some laughs. We're going to get some Fs out there that will hopefully be old takes exposed in a year, like I was with my Lions one. But I might still be right on that. You guys still have to pay Derek off. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye coming. Cry about it, Lions fans. I'm Charles McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at 4verts. Derek is on Twitter at QBClass with a K. And our producer behind the board, Stone Rochelle. You can find him on Twitter at SJ Rochelle. And we will see you this weekend for everything you need 2024 NFL draft related.